Welcome to Redtastic. Story 1. So, my 16 male's dad, 43 male, got remarried to a 27-year-old woman, and they had a baby daughter 3 months ago. Ever since the baby was born, my dad has dumped all the household chores on me. I've been doing everything: cooking, laundry, cleaning, tidying, and he even expects me to help with the baby. I told him I'm not comfortable with that, but he didn't care. Meanwhile, my dad is barely ever home anymore since the baby arrived. The only thing he does is take out the trash. It's gotten overwhelming, and on Friday, things hit a breaking point. I was supposed to go on a short field trip with my class, but my dad refused to sign the permission slip because I wouldn't be home in time to cook dinner. That day, I didn't have school, and I was so upset watching my friends post on Instagram about the trip while I was stuck at home. Frustrated, I called my grandparents on my mom's side, who live out of state. When I told them what was going on, they were furious. I didn't expect them to fly out, but they did, and they showed up today. When they arrived, I was in the middle of doing laundry. My dad's new wife answered the door with one of those beauty facial mask things on, and the moment my grandparents saw that, they were livid. They absolutely tore into her for not doing her share around the house. She didn't even know who they were until they introduced themselves, and she looked shocked. Now, my grandparents want to take me with them, but I still have school here, so I don't know if that's an option. They have decided to stay in a hotel for a few days to figure things out, and my dad rushed home early when he heard they were here. Right now, I can hear him and his wife arguing loudly downstairs. I just retreated to my room and haven't done any of the chores I usually do. This is the most time I've had for myself since they had the kid. I know this whole situation is wrong. I'm not supposed to be the one taking care of everything, but I do not know what's gonna happen to me now. My dad hasn't spoken to me properly yet, but I know he's not going to be happy with me. Any advice? Edit. As to why I didn't tell my mom, she died 3 years ago due to a major stroke. She was fine one moment, and then she was never awake after that. Update. My dad sat me down for a talk earlier. He looked exhausted and miserable. I almost felt bad. He asked me if things were really that hard for me. I told him straight up, yes, it is that hard. I've been doing all the chores, cooking, laundry, cleaning, and on top of that, he wanted me to help with the baby too. I told him it's not fair. He tried to argue that I needed to take some responsibility around the house, whether I liked it or not, because he has to work and his wife has the baby to take care of. But I told him, no, not my circus. I told him he needs to pull his own weight and not just dump everything on me. His new wife also needs to step up. I'm not the replacement adult in the house. Earlier, my grandparents called and they said things will start getting better soon. Apparently, they told my dad if he didn't make changes, they would pull the financial support they've been giving him. Turns out, they've been covering the mortgage my mom took on the house when she bought the house. And losing that would put him in a really tough spot. That really shook my dad, according to them. So that's where things are right now. I'm not sure what's going to happen next, but I feel like I've finally been heard, even if it took all this chaos for my dad to wake up. For now, I'm just waiting to see if things actually change or if it's just talk. At least I have my grandparents on my side, and that makes me feel a little more at ease. I'm sorry about your mom, OP, and I'm sorry about what's been happening at home too. You shouldn't be doing so much work and having so much responsibility at home at this age. It's not right, especially when it's affecting your personal life and you're not getting a break. It was a smart move to call your grandparents. I'm glad they've got your back and they're ready to support you if your dad won't. I hope this serves as a wake-up call for your dad. It's not your responsibility to help care for the child he and his wife decided to have. I would advise you to go stay with your grandparents after school if you can. They seem to have your best interest at heart. Story 2. Am I the a-hole for moving and renting out our house and not consulting my brother-in-law? Technically, are we the a-holes? So my husband's grandma died and left him some money. Not that much, but enough for us to put with our savings and buy a second property as an investment. We've just had an offer accepted. We plan to move into the new place, which has a workshop attached for my husband, Jeff, to work on his motorbikes and rent out our existing place, which is bigger and likely to make more dollars in rent. He told his family and his brother is pissed. His brother, who we will call Brad, is about 10 years older and used to part own our existing house. See, when Jeff was 15, he came to live with Brad for family reasons. Jeff, Brad, and their mom bought our existing house for Jeff and Brad to live in. But Brad moved away after about 4 years and has been traveling and working abroad since. I met Jeff just after Brad moved away and then moved in with him after a couple of years, with Brad's blessing. We started covering the mortgage ourselves, and after we got engaged, agreed to buy the house off of Brad and mother-in-law, as we wanted to get on the property ladder. Already lived there, and Brad had no interest in moving back in. This didn't happen for a couple of years, not for lack of us pushing. Brad is a hoarder, he would admit this, and doesn't like to get rid of anything. During this time, we were stuck in a limbo, unable to move house or buy the existing one, all the while contributing to a mortgage, which was only 1/3 Jeff's. We finally completed last year and are no longer financially tied to him. It still took him another 6 months to sort out the room, full of stuff he had left with us, which is now in our attic. So, back to the present day, and our situation has changed. We are starting a family and need somewhere with better vehicle access and a workshop for Jeff. It makes more financial and practical sense to move and rent the existing place rather than buy somewhere else to rent out. We had always wanted to do this at some point, but now we have the inheritance, it's possible. We haven't heard from Brad in ages as he's away traveling and hasn't often replied to Jeff's messages. Jeff can't remember the last time they managed to speak on the phone. When we had the offer accepted, Jeff texted his family. Brad came back saying he would have liked to have been told we wouldn't be living in existing house because he has an emotional attachment to the place and wouldn't have sold it to us if he knew we wouldn't be living there. We thought he would have been happy for us. He had never suggested buying Jeff out or moving back or any alternative to us buying it. We would have owned it 3 years ago if it were up to us. If he had seriously not wanted to sell it, we would probably have bought somewhere else 3 years ago. We really get on with Brad, but I think he has some deep-seated issues that Jeff owes him for letting him come and live with him. He's told me that he's sick of the special treatment Jeff gets off their mum. I feel like he thinks we have to ask his permission to move. Are we the a-holes for deciding to move out and rent the place out? Are we a-holes for not consulting him? You and your husband are not a-holes, OP. You can continue to live your life in a house just to please someone who might never even come around to see the house. The house was already yours, so you get to decide what to do with it. And if Brad was reachable and available to contact, I'm sure you would have told him about your plans of getting a bigger place too. He should be happy for you and his brother, but instead he's talking about emotional attachment to some house and making you all look like bad people for wanting to move forward. If he cares about the house so much, he can buy or just rent it from you guys. Problem solved. Now for some comments. Brad is an a-hole, not you two. You bought the house, it is yours. He has no right to tell you to consult him before doing something with your own property. If he felt that way, he shouldn't have sold it to you in the first place. Brad needs to grow up. He already moved on, traveling very far away. It's not your job to live your lives as placeholders for his supposed nostalgia. Brad said he has emotional attachment to the place and wouldn't have sold it to you guys if he knew you and your husband wouldn't be living there. Tough titties. It's not his house. You already bought him out and he doesn't get to dictate what other people do with their property. If he wants to buy the house from you or rent it from you because of his emotional attachment, let him do that. Brad is a hoarder and can't let go of anything, including the old house. The best you can do now is to tell him that you are sorry you couldn't reach him for his feedback, but don't let him rent the house or make any claim on it. You could end up with a situation where you own the old house and he's living there, turning it into a dump. Ideally, you want to unload the house, get Brad's stuff into a storage unit and sell it. If Brad wants to buy it, he can buy it, and it won't affect your finances. Story 3. Am I the a-hole for throwing out someone else's rotten food? So I'm living in a house with other college students, and I noticed some moldy cheese on one shelf, so I sent to the group chat saying someone, including what shelf, had moldy food in the fridge. 2 days later, nothing has been done about it. And opening the fridge is releasing a horrible smell into the kitchen. This weekend was a 4-day weekend, and most of the people in the house were traveling except me and a few others. I confirmed with them that it wasn't theirs, and once again brought it up in the group chat, and no one said it was theirs. With 4 days of this ahead, I decided to take it to the outside dumpster and get rid of it. Later on, I discovered that the scent is still there, and so I investigate the shelf to find raw meat that had expired a month ago. I immediately disposed of that and the scent is gone, besides the lingering scent. I said nothing about this meat, figuring whoever it was would not want to confess to something like that. The weekend is now ending and the girl steps forward in the group chat to call me out for touching someone else's stuff, saying I had no right to throw out someone else's food and that I should have talked to her about it, even though I didn't know who it was and had brought it up to the group. Now, whether or not you should have moldy food in a group fridge is an a-hole move is obvious. But should I just have waited the 4 days and brought it up again after? Did I do bad? Now for some comments. Not the a-hole. She's the a-hole, absolutely. It's hazardous to have expired meat in the fridge with the rest of your edible food, and it's disgusting. She had no right keeping her rotten meat in there, especially since she didn't respond when you asked whose it was. You're not the a-hole at all. You're not the a-hole, OP. Ask her if it would be better for everyone to get sick from her rotting expired meat that you already mentioned days before and gave her time to do whatever it was she wanted with it. But she for some reason didn't. Any expired food is grounds for immediately throwing it out. What was she going to do with it otherwise? Just leave it in the fridge? I would just respond, LOL, what? And leave it at that. She's absolutely the a-hole here, and is probably just frustrated because she didn't realize it was rotten or from something completely unrelated. In person, approach her and ask her what she really thinks you should do in the future. Assume that rotting food is hers. Ask individually. Leave it in her bedroom or something.